So tomorrow, the final episode of Season 1 of High School Musical, the series, drops. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 4 High School Musical movies from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 4 High School Musical movies. As we go into this, when these movies came out, I was in the back half of my 20s. I was not the target audience. So for this ranking, I wanted to bring in a couple of my friends that they are just as passionate about this franchise as you were. They were there at that time, fell in love with these movies from a young age. Kristen, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kristen Maldonado. My channel is youtube.com/kmaldo, and I also love talking about movies and TV, and I'm a big High School Musical fan, so I'm really excited about this ranking.
And then Zach, can you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, what's up? My name's Zach. I also review movies on YouTube as well, and High School Musical, I grew up with these 3 movies, not the Sharpay one per se, but this series on Disney Plus has kind of reinvigorated me to like revisit these movies, and I'm excited to be talking about it.
So as I mentioned before, I was like 25, 26 and married or about to get married when the first one of these movies came out. So I totally missed over the entire wave. Sometimes people are like, you never watched High School Musical? How? Well, because it would have been a little bit weird if I did watch it when it first came out. And so it's even a little bit weird watching them for the first time at 38 years old. What was it like the wave of excitement when these movies first came out?
Oh, I mean, like, I was 16, I was a theater kid. We did like multiple productions of High School Musical in our community, and like, it was just one of those moments where it was like getting to see kind of what we did every day after school, you know, doing different productions, like kind of come to life on screen. And so we were like fanatics. Like me and my brother would like perform the songs in our house for our parents, and like we went on and did like different productions of it. I remember my brother he was Troy in the middle school production of High School Musical, and it was like the highlight of our lives. We were like, this is insane. And so like I grew up with it. I went to the concerts, and I've been watching High School Musical, the series, and reviewing that every week just because it like brings me back so much nostalgia.
Zach, how about you? What was your experience?
You know, it's funny. I don't remember the age that I saw the first one in. I just remember I was in elementary school, and people kept talking about High School Musical. I'm like, okay, well, I don't like musicals. Sorry, like they're not for me. And I'm notorious on my channel for saying like I'm so picky about musicals, but then I like all the High School Musical movies pretty much. So it's funny. I remember I told my mom I want to see this movie. Disney Channel isn't playing it anymore. There's no way I've seen, but you can buy it on DVD. Christmas morning came, I had it, I watched it. That was one of my only presents that year. And my dad was like, why did you want that? Why?
Why would
And then I watched it, you know, I liked it. You know, the nostalgia kicked in. Little old me kind of feel like I could fall in love in some way, wanted my hair to look exactly like Zac Efron's in the movies. You know, it was all fun. I joined basketball because of it too, so, you know, it's fun in those parts.
Like my experience, I think I had some awareness. I'd heard of High School Musical, and then I watched the first episode of Modern Family. In it, the dad, Ty Burrell, is like trying to be the cool dad. So he starts singing and dancing along to We're All in This Together. That was really my introduction to High School Musical. Like, I didn't know really what it was before that. So this has kind of been interesting to kind of be so far detached from something that was so important for a generation of people. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. And what I did was I had each of them send me their list, and then I had my ranking. I averaged them together. That's the one we're going to talk through. And coming in last place is Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure. So the spin-off that came a couple years later, where kind of the mean girl of the bunch gets her own film, and between all of us, this is the one that came in last place. Actually, after we watched these 4 movies, my wife said this was her favorite of the bunch, which, you know, keep in mind, we're in our mid-30s, very different phase of life to start watching these. You kind of connect with different things, whereas if you watch a lot of the themes of the main 3 films, they are very teenage-centric, and if you watch this one, it's a little bit more adult because it's about someone trying to find their place in the world. That was my wife's favorite film. Wasn't my favorite of the bunch, but how about you guys? What's your take on this one as the core fan base?
So for me, I'd actually only seen this for the first time just a couple weeks ago when we were preparing for this ranking. Sharpay is my least favorite character. That's just the truth. I like her. I think she's funny. I love Ashley Tisdale, especially because of Zach and Cody. But I remember when I heard this was announced, I was like, I don't care for that at all. And so I never checked it out years ago, and now I checked it out for the first time. And you are right, I like the adult theme of it, like of her trying to find her place in the world, and some of the songs in here are fun. They're just not as memorable as the other High School Musicals, and it felt like a last-ditch effort to be like, okay, what can we do with this franchise? Okay, Zac Efron's obviously never gonna come back. Vanessa Hudgens is out doing Spring Breakers with James Franco. We don't want her back now. And you look at the rest of the cast, and I'm sure they're like, we're done. Well, Ashley Tisdale's still with us, so let's give her a little spin-off right here. And, you know, is it fun? Yeah, it is. But do I ever want to rewatch it? No, not particularly.
Kristen, how about you?
I think that, well, I feel a little bit the opposite in that I think Sharpay is one of the most iconic characters from the show, from the movies. I think that she was someone that kind of got a cult following. Like, she was such a mood, and especially like watching back all the films now, I'm like, wow, like, is Sharpay my favorite character? Like, she might be, just because she was so out there and so extra. And then I think when we got into this last movie with her, she's kind of given a little bit of like Elle Woods vibes. She's kind of moving on from being this big fish in a small pond at their original hometown, and she's out in the big city trying to make it. I do think that while it was like a fun story to see her trying to make it on Broadway, I love those kinds of stories. For me, compared to the other movies, it is a bit cheesier. I mean, they're cheesy movies, but this one to me was like the cheesiest one. And overall, I didn't actually think any of the songs really stood out to me. And when I look at it compared to all the other films, it does feel very meh in terms of like the performances. Like, I think they chose a smart character to go with if you are going to do a spin-off, but I just didn't think that the story really went as deep as it could have gone, especially after you're coming off of that, third movie where they're like in a feature, it's a feature film. To kind of go back down to being just like a television movie, it kind of just like is not as exciting.
Yeah, so for me, I had this, so you guys both had this as the last one on your list, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So I had this one at number 3 on mine, so a slightly more positive in the scheme of things on it than each of you were. And probably it is kind of, she was such a mean girl in the first 3 films. It doesn't really have an arc. Each film, it's like she just tries to manipulate things, and then she doesn't get her way, but she doesn't actually change all that much. This movie actually gave her something where it seemed like she actually grew a little bit. And I think for me, even, kind of the references to Elle Wood and things like that, where you developed her a little bit more and saw progress there. So that connected with me probably a little bit, but, only slight improvement, I would say, over the one that I had in last place. Any final thoughts on this one?
I'll throw in there, I mean, you mentioned that she's an iconic character, and I mean, when you do look at Disney Channel original movies, she is iconic to that part. When I said that she's my least favorite, I mean, I should have just pressed is that I never felt like I could relate to her as much. But I think what we can all say is that there was a Sharpay at all of our high schools. That 100%, there was always a Sharpay. And I think that's what really, I look back at my high school years and I'm like, man. And it was funny, my high school, our mascot was a Wildcat. So that's kind of funny in that whole part. But, there's a way to relate, and we all have that one character that we do relate to throughout all these films. I don't know about you, Sean, maybe you do as well, but I know for me personally, there's at least one character in here that I do relate to.
Yeah, I guess that's the other side to it of, you say that she's the least relatable or whatever. I think some of that's even she's so designed to be the irritant inside of it that you either can connect with the fact that she does that so well, or she's just the kind of one that constantly frustrates you inside of all of this, which will bring us to number 3 on our list, which is High School Musical number 2. This is actually the one that I had in last place. For me, this one just felt the most kind of contrived of the bunch, where the others, the central conflict of the story, there felt like more of a truth to it. You could relate to it a little bit of the basketball player that discovers a new talent and he's torn between these two groups, other people's expectations for him, going off to college, girl goes off to the big city. This one, it just felt like we're trying to contrive more high school politics and stuff like that. I was like, it didn't resonate with me quite as much as the others. How about you two?
I think with this one, I felt like you could tell that this was a second movie. Like they were coming in and everything was brighter and more extra. Like this is where they kind of introduced like Sharpay has 2 lockers and, you know, everything just felt very like heightened. But I think at the same time, for me, when I think of this movie, it feels like the awkward phase of like high school. I feel like, you know, this is when Zac Efron dyed his hair like a weird color and he had this very crazy fake tan. And I felt like they were diving into stories of like kind of using other people to get what you want. I think Sharpay and Troy really do that in this film. But so like in the long run, this one wasn't my favorite. I think they have a lot of great songs. I think they have a lot of great Sharpay moments specifically in this movie. But in the long run, I felt like it was just like the awkward high school phase of being in high school. And also they didn't even focus on an actual musical. Like there's no high school or musical in this film. It's like we're in like summer vacation. Yeah. We're working at like at a fancy club. It didn't really, it kind of takes me out of it. There's
a talent show though. It's a talent show
to be like to realize, wow, you know, there really is no high school or musical in this at all.
This has always been my least favorite. Like I've never really, this is another one that like, it's weird. Even as a kid and now even watching it, I find this to be the slowest pacing out of all the films. I find it, yeah, the heightened, it feels like, besides Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure, it feels the most cheesiest. And, I mean, musicals can have that cheese to it, but this one feels like it's going a little bit too much. And, I mean, I'm a 22-year-old talking about High School Musical, but even as a kid, I remember, like, this was never my favorite one. In fact, I don't even own this one. I've only owned 1 and 3. There was just something about 2 that, again, the pacing felt so slow, but weirdly enough, I would say this is that when the musical numbers do come into play, I find them to be some of the most memorable out of the whole entire franchise, even though they do not take place in a high school, and they're all taking place at a country club. Because when you go and look at the musical number Bet on It, I love it. I love it. And absolutely the ending sequence of them all dancing around on stage and singing is one of my favorites as well. I like some of the coloring at the end of it as well on the talent show. And of course, Miley Cyrus does have a little bit of a cameo in here. Let's just remember that Disney had a poll to see who would have a cameo in this movie, and Miley Cyrus won.
What I think is so cool is that they did make this an interactive movie. Like there were several things that they polled people on and were like, "What do you want to see?" And then they like put that in. I think that just kind of showed how they wanted, you know, they knew that the fans were obsessed with the first movie and they wanted to like bring them into this second movie and make them feel a part of it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I think this one was also rushed. I think they were like, oh my god, first one's a lightning in the bottle. We got to get a second one out now. And I feel like you can feel that within the story again. It feels the slowest. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that, but I mean, these movies aren't that long, but this one just drags. And
well, they're actually a lot longer than I expected.
Yeah.
The runtime on most of these is 2 hours, and I was like, whoa! Like I was expecting made-for-TV movies 90 minutes, and they're a solid 2 hours long. And this was the one where I was like, goodness, how is this 2 hours long? Where is all the time?
Yeah, and it feels like the one story plot that I hate in this, and I hate this in almost any movie. They break up. Then they get back together. They have this fight, they break up, and then they get back together.
That's the thing that bothers me. Like they do this in every single one of the movies. They have Troy and Gabriella have some kind of argument, or they separate, and then Gabriella sings this really cheesy, dramatic song. Like that's what happens in every single movie.
And I mean, they're good songs, but every single time.
They are. Yeah.
Is this the one that has the fish song?
Oh yeah, yes, the Hawaiian
fish song.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever that one came on, my wife looked at me and she, Sean, what is this?
It feels like it comes out of nowhere.
I like the baseball songs the most.
It's where you could feel like the plot turning around and it's picking up pace as soon as that kind of like that story and the brother kind of switched over sides. That's where it felt like it really got its momentum and got going a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I think that's like the fun of this film is seeing Ryan kind of become friends with everyone else at East High. I feel like he kind of was always off to the side because his sister would push him away and he didn't have these other friends, and this was the movie where they really like brought him in and started like setting up everyone becoming a family in like the third movie.
With that said, let's move on to our runner-up here, and that is High School Musical 3. I think right out of the gate, this one just feels much more like an obvious follow-up to the first film. From the basketball stuff being tied into the opening scene to the themes that kind of run throughout it, it feels much more like an obvious kind of continuation rather than, hey, we're going to do more High School Musical stuff, but when are we going to do that? Well, I guess we'll go off at this country club and have people playing golf. This one felt like, okay, yeah, this is kind of closing out the story. And I really appreciated that about this particular film. Zach, how about you?
So, Sean, are you saying that High School Musical 2 was the last Jedi of this franchise? And that this is the Rise of Skywalker?
That is exactly what I was saying. Thinking this whole time.
Cool. Just making sure. So this is actually my favorite one.
Interesting. Very cool.
I have a lot of nostalgic memories to this. I actually got to see this like months early. I don't remember how we got into this. My mom or something won. And it was like a big group of us from like the church I was going to at that time, like got to go see this film. I think it was the church or maybe it was my sister's friends. I don't really remember. I just remember I got to go to school and brag when I was in like junior high that I got to see High School Musical 3 early, and everyone's like, that's stupid. That's not even a thing anymore. I'm like, okay, you know what? Whatever. High School Musical 3 for me, that was my favorite one. I think it does feel like an actual feature film. I think that's the biggest thing. The production budget is the highest. I think you are right. It does feel like a direct sequel from the first one, which I adore the first one. And I think when it comes down to this third one, for me, all the dance numbers are fantastic. I think all the set pieces are great. And especially when it comes down to the Scream song by Zac Efron when he's dancing in the hallways and stuff. Great choreograph in there. Like, great choreography. And it really, like, it still holds up today. And even some of the soundtrack, I do at times find myself going back and listening to a lot more of High School Musical 3 and some of High School Musical 1. But again, like I said, High School Musical 2, I liked all the songs. High School Musical 3, for me, I love all the songs. And there's not one weak link for me. There's always these different ones that do still attach to me. And again, yes, Troy and Gabriella do break up. And they get back together.
Classic.
Through a great song. And I think their chemistry with one another, Vanessa Hudgens and Zac Efron have excellent chemistry. And I know we haven't even talked about that yet, but I've always seen it from the first one and even to this one, and you really do believe in this high school couple falling in love, which is just great. And then all the friends and everything have a great relationship too.
Pause on what you just said right there. I think that's also one of the reasons that part 2 doesn't have the same magic to it, is that they're apart the whole movie.
I agree with that.
It's like the couple that's like the core at the center of it, these two people being together, and in the second one, they're not. Sorry, just wanted to interject that real quick.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, you're right in that part. And I think that's what's so great about this one is that everyone is together again. Like, they're not split up. And again, it's really weird how, I mean, that is totally Last Jedi type stuff. Everyone's split up in Last Jedi. And High School Musical to kind of split up everyone as well. But this one has them all close and center again. And it's fun in that part. The Boys in Back is another great sequence with Troy and Chad. And I love this one. I love this one. And maybe a part of it's just because it's an actual feature film. And I have good memories of how I got to see it very, very early.
Kristen, how about you?
I think what I love about this film is that they really bring everyone together. You know, we are following them in their senior year. There's so many huge milestones that are so relatable that everyone gets to experience or go through in high school.
Exactly.
The prom, graduation, that kind of fear of like, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I think they really tie it well back to the original theme of High School Musical. The first movie, they really focused on being yourself and can you do multiple things? Like, can you be that basketball guy and a singer? And in this one, they really go back to that message of like finding out who you are, figuring out what you're going to do in the future, and like you can do all these things. And so I love that at the end, Troy gets kind of everything that he wanted. He gets the girl and he gets to do both of his passions. I think that I love how meta this musical is because they're literally putting on a musical of their senior year. And so I loved how they tied all those performances, like the musical numbers in together. One that really stood out to me was the prom song that they did, how they're like getting ready for prom. It's the night of nights. And then we're seeing them actually put that number together on stage as well for their show. So that really, I loved how they did all those moments, like kind of connecting them to each other. The other thing that I really love about this is the music. I think that, you know, like you said, you can tell that there's a huge budget on this. It's their first feature film. And one of my favorite songs had to be the I Want It All reprise with Ryan. That's like when he's just like belting and he's like, yeah, yeah. And then like to see that some of these characters that were that were more of the underdogs, like Ryan and Kelsey, actually have these like really awesome moments at the end of this film. Just, it was just really cool to watch.
It was interesting. I was doing research on this one, and 'cause I knew it had been released in theaters, but it just kind of went under the radar for me. It made $250 million worldwide, which is that is not under the radar. That's like this huge event, because it wasn't just the U.S. I mean, it was like a global phenomena, which is pretty crazy that.
Especially this is the third movie in a franchise.
Yeah. Right, third movie in a franchise of TV movies. Cable TV movies.
Do you know what the budget was for this one? Does anyone know what it is?
20 million. Like 20 million.
Yes.
So in the scheme of things, like nothing.
Yeah, and I honestly, if it wasn't for the actors, you definitely know they would have made a fourth one. They would have found a way to do a fourth one. And honestly, I'm going to be flat out honest. I wouldn't be surprised if 10 to 15 years, I know a lot of them have kind of separated themselves from Disney Channel. I would not be surprised if we saw a college or a high school reunion type thing with all them coming back. Because, I mean, truly the only actor doing anything right now is Zac Efron. And I mean, not all of his movies are doing fantastic.
Hey, Vanessa
or they're
Hudgens
great
was in Polar last year. So, I mean, she's doing
and
great.
she's in the new Bad Boys.
And all
There you
those,
go.
I guess
See?
you're right in
those
that. But
Christmas movies.
See? There you go.
yeah.
But honestly, I do think a lot of these people are still, do still feel very nostalgic about High School Musical. They're all still like really close friends. I mean, Vanessa Hudgens and Ashley Tisdale are best friends. And a lot of these people, I think, are open because, I mean, we do see Lucas Grabeel, who plays Ryan, appear in the High School Musical, the series, one of those episodes. We see the girl that played Martha Cox come in. Corbin Blue, who was Chad, was doing some interviews with that cast. So I think that there is potential to, at least even if we don't see a big reunion till later on down the line, at least for them to make some kind of connection and be in this new series, because we've already seen a couple of them.
As I was watching this movie, as someone that has no history with it, even I was thinking man, they can do something to get Zac Efron to come back. This just feels like it's designed to have a follow-up thing to it. But with all that said, coming in first place is the original High School Musical. So this is watching it for the first time kind of a couple months back when we were first kind of talking about doing all of this. It's just interesting because it's just so good old-fashioned high school drama, politics of being torn between different people's expectations, different groups inside the school, and all those tensions that everyone kind of has in some form or another in high school. And they really did find a way to just kind of package that inside of this little musical that obviously captured a wave of a generation of people. So what was that like for you, Kristen? What's your take on this one?
I mean, this is my favorite of all the High School Musical movies. It is a classic. It's what made you fall in love with it. I think it does feel like old school. It feels a little bit different than the other movies. It feels like, the very beginning. And I loved all of the music in it. These songs are the ones that are still nostalgic for me, especially the great ballads that we get to see Troy and Gabriella do. I think that there's so much heart, and there's so much I don't know, it's just so wholesome that there were times when I was rewatching it and I was am I getting emotional? What is happening to me? Why is this so good? And I think that there is something of just this message of these kids that are, from kind of different worlds. It is originally it was the script was inspired by Grease. They were gonna redo Grease or continue on, and I think you can kind of see that in the idea of Troy being this jock and Gabriella being this smart girl, and these two people coming together and but instead of doing that cliche oh well the person has to change to be for the other person, they kind of go through this more internal journey of trying to figure out who am I, can I do multiple things, and essentially changing the whole school, because with Stick to the Status Quo, you see everybody has things that they've been hiding about themselves that they're well, I don't know if I can come out and express that I love to bake or that I love to dance, and it's kind of really encouraging people to just be themselves, and who cares what people think. And at first you do see that there's some struggle between these groups of people being you can't do that, and it's well, why can't you do it? You can do whatever you want to do, you should just be yourself. And then it's great to see all of these people come together and kind of build each other up and form new friendships and embrace who they really want to be. And there's just something about that story that really gets to me. It's just, to me, it's an emotional story, because that's something that I think a lot of people are growing up, not even just people as you're growing up, but throughout your life, people go through that, trying to figure out who you are, what's your place in the world, and wanting to be accepted.
All right. Zach, how about you?
You mentioned a lot of great things in there, and one of the things you mentioned, well, a couple things that you mentioned that I want to kind of go off of is the emotional. I mean, Disney's really good at making music that can give you goosebumps no matter what kind of age you are, personally. And whether it's Breaking Free or start of something new, those two songs in particular are some of the things that really stick out to me, and are some of my favorites throughout this whole entire series. And personally, my top, like if I were to do a top 5, these are like top 3 songs for me out of the whole High School Musical franchise. And they're the ones that me and my friends will be in the car just blasting them for some weird reason because we want to feel a little bit nostalgic and get a little bit of goosebumps in that whole entirety, but it works for that whole thing. And I think one of the things that you also mentioned is that it's a classic. Like, this is one of the original Disney classic movies, and I think like years from now we're gonna look back at this and be like, that's a part of like a Disney classic lineup, and it's quite unique to see how big these got and where like this franchise ended up going. But one of the things I also wanted to add into there is, of course, the friend element we are bringing up and how they bring about these friends so perfectly all together in here, and really bringing all these characters together in a way that some of these characters could come off annoying, especially Sharpay and her brother, but they don't. They come off to the point where they don't just jump over the line and get annoying. No, they're riding the fine line to where you're like, this is very entertaining, but at the same time not annoying. I can kind of relate to you. And you're bringing that one thing of people being torn apart of who should I be, what expectations should I follow. And weird enough, when you're coming into a Disney Channel movie and you're talking about all those stuff, when you look at a deeper meaning, I mean, this movie had a lot of great messages for kids, and in general, I think for anyone who could watch this movie and be like, you know what, like, why should I have to feel like I need to be this when I could be both of them? Or in a sense, I could do what I'm actually passionate about. And I love that about this. And of course, it's the whole thing of get your head in the game. Yeah, you're gonna get your head in the game. This is a Disney classic, and I see why you had it at your number 1. And personally, like, you know, it's my number 2 favorite, but it's the one that I definitely watch the most.
So I have this one as my number 1 as well. Another thing in there that's just stop and think that for this Disney Channel original movie, you know, one of those pieces in the kind of rise of Zac Efron that you wonder if like someone else had been in there, if it hadn't been Vanessa Hudgens, these people that kind of had this talent that went on to do bigger things, what could have been? Some of that stuff's always interesting to me think of different possibilities. Kristen, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me everywhere at Kaymaldo, Kaymaldo. I'm on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all over the place, yeah. Talking about TV and definitely talking about High School Musical, the musical, the series. So if you like talking about that show, come check me out.
Zach, where can we find you?
Well, you guys can find me on YouTube at Zach Pope. Just type in Zach Pope in the description, or not in the description, the search bar, and you'll find me. I'm also on Twitter at Pope the King, and on Instagram at Zach Pope, but with 2 H's because the other Zach Pope account was mine. I got locked out of it. Long story short, whatever. But thank you so much for having me, Sean. And really, this is just a great discussion. Talking High School Musical, I feel so nostalgic now that I want to go watch this.
Everyone, be sure to share your ranking down below in the comments section. Be sure to head on over to their channels, subscribe, let them know in the comment section that I sent you over there, and keep talking movies too much.